Hello and welcome to my live painting demo tonight. It's Tuesday, February 12th, and I am waiting for a few more people to join. I think I'm the only person watching this video at the moment, um, so actually I'm just going to start. People can watch back later if they missed the very beginning. And this is tonight I'm going to do a painting of a model that I've painted a few times before. This is Ellie. Tonight she's Ellie Diane. Sometimes she goes by slightly different handles on Instagram. But I first found her on Sketchy, and let me see if I have a little bit more. Yeah, have a little bit more Gamsol I can pour in. That has um, sifted out, so it's almost pure again. And I'm going to get into the drawing part of this. I have a stiff bristle round brush that I like to use for the initial drawing, and I'm going to get right in. Yeah. So I have a little bit of something called Torrent Gray I'm going to use for the drawing. This is a Gamblin paint. They use the kind of what's left on all of the mixer blades um, from mixing all the different paints and make a gray paint out of it, and then they give it away when you buy some other colors. Just going to get the general shape of her face, and then I'm going to do a little bit of measuring, make sure I have everything where I want it. Actually, I think this is for a little bit. Yeah. Got the forearm coming up and the heel of her hand aligns with the bottom of her chin. So let me get a um, few measurements in here. Bottom of the chin looks about right. Side of the face, pretty close. The other side, not too bad. Then this photo was a little bit grainy. I ran it through a Photoshop filter called Reduce Noise, and that created interesting uh, texture. Really took out a lot of the distracting noise elements and created some nice areas, sort of flatter areas, so I could see where color transitions um, are more clear between one transition and the next. So that actually is closer to the structure of how I paint, of larger areas of color that have transitions into the next color. So I was kind of happy with that. I was a little worried the photo seemed to lack a lot of detail, but once I cleaned it up a little bit, it was much closer to how I wanted it to be. And I see Jack is joining us. Jack, I'm kind of curious where you're joining us from. I always want to know where people are watching. Um, I think most of my audience tends to be in the US or Canada just because of the time that I'm do these demos. It's too late for a lot of people and watch. Okay, this her shirt breaks her comes into her chin right there and then comes down like that. Did I measure this already? I think I did. Yep. Then we have her eyebrow. Have that kind of triangular feature right here. Then her other eyebrow. Get a measurement on that. For me, the placement of the eyes always seems the most critical. Little other things can be off, but when the eyes are off, it just seems to jump out at you. She has her pinky finger breaking the line of her face right there. I want to make sure I just indicate that a little bit. The heel of her hand again. And then the bottom of her hand is facing us. So you can see that dropping off behind the chin there. And her chin is just a little bit thinner than how I have it painted, so I'm just going to start to adjust that. The other eye slightly higher, which means she just has a little bit of tilt to her head. And I get them close enough so that I have a bit of confidence when I'm putting down some uh, more committal brush strokes. Between the bottom of her nose and where her lips start. And that is maybe because the angle of her head, we're looking a little bit down. So if you think about it, there's kind of this ellipse idea that we're looking down across her head. Her mouth is curving across there. Bottom lip, and then her chin. So something like that. And then I'm just going to check everything, remeasure. Bottom of the nose, we measure from the top. Okay, Jack's here from South Carolina. Yeah, so I have some measurement off there. That's the nose, bottom of the nose from the top. So I can see it's actually closer to here. Let me measure from the bottom because there might be something off here. Yep, that seems about right. So need her nose to be just a little bit longer. And I think what I'm going to do is start to mix up some flesh tones because I need to clean up some of the lines that I made that that aren't in the right place. And I know there's going to be a little more red on the tip of her nose, so I'm just going to go exaggerate that a little bit. I can come in, get a little bit of that purple color that's in the side there. A little bit of that pink, light pink highlight. Now I don't have enough quinacridone red on my palette, so I'm going to have to dig some out. Let's just go a little bit thicker there, something like that. Okay, so then I'm going to go a little bit lighter here for the philtrum underneath her nose. Trying to exaggerate the yellow in there a little bit. I tend to be a little bit weak on the yellow in the face. Usually when I stand back and look at all my colors, everything tends to be a little bit too cool, which means that the painting is just really starving of yellows and oranges. And so I just have to be a little bit more forceful with that, with those colors. Okay, now I know my quinacridone red is in here. That's the alizarin. Yep, here's the quinacridone. Hope you can see enough of my palette okay that you can see some of my color mixing. I was struggling to find the right angle, and I can tilt this a little bit more. If you give me a second. Okay, this paint cap's not cooperating. Okay, let's see if I can just give you a little bit more of the, that's okay. I'm cutting off a little bit of the top of the painting, but rather sacrifice that a bit, and then so you can see more of the palette. I get a few people ask me, can we see the palette? So now you get to see the palette. Okay, so, oh, well, that's too strong a color there. So I'm going to throw in a little bit of white here. I'm going to cheat this a little bit by bringing that white up. And then it goes lighter here on that transition to the cheek. I can just scrub that in. Doesn't have to be fancy yet. Sometimes I'll come back with much cleaner strokes to make it look more finished. Oh, yes, the quinacridone red. The whole reason I got that is so that I can draw in the lips. The lower lip is a little bit lighter, which is typical. If your light source is from above, it will light more of the lower lip. Let's carve a little bit off of her nose here. Get a little more white. And a little bit off the lips underneath. Okay, and then so our chin. And then our chin goes right into that shirt. That's where we're going to get some black in here. And then the black that I'm using is chromatic black. It's a gambling color. It's a mixture of phthalo emerald and quinacridone red. So it's not a true black per se. It's a created black from just basically color mixing complementary colors together. And for you color purists out there, it should meet your needs of having a black that isn't in your palette, or not having a black in your palette, but having a black at the same time. And there's a lot of gray on this side of the face, and I find this is where one thing I tend to not do enough is be more forceful also with my grays that really support the colors that are in the painting. So here I want to do a little more measuring because just that whole the nose thing not being in the right place. So initially it got so far off, and I'm not really sure why my perception of where it should be was. Let me just double check the eyes. I'm measuring from the bottom of the upper lid. Same thing. It's all pretty close to where it needs to be. And I need to do a little measuring from side to side too. Corner of the eye, corner of this eye. Okay. This is going to come out a little bit further. Let's say there. Okay, so I sort of have this pool of color that I'm using for the flesh tones, and I can modulate that very easily, and it helps tie everything together, the fact that I'm just mixing in and out of this one big pool of color. It's much harder if you're mixing a bunch of colors separately to get incremental steps. I have this darker red, darker Get a little bit of purple or alizarin crimson in there. Okay, that got a little bit too magenta, so I'm throwing some yellow back in. And then the step here is just lighter and a little bit redder. So again, I can go to my pool of color and mix um, the next colors in that direction. Then I need to go darker again to get some of this color that's here. Okay, and I'm just going to indicate where her nostril is. Something right like that. And then I'm going to check the placement of this. So the bottom of the tip of her nose, that's just right on. Okay, so I feel very confident about that. Want to bring in the side of her cheek here. And a little bit of the light that's on her neck that's next to it. Okay, I just obliterated that shadow there, but I can just get it back in. Okay, and then it's going to be sharper on the bottom edge and then softer on the cheek edge, because one place it's turning away from us and making a hard line, and the other one it's softly gradating into the cheek. And by playing that soft against the harder edges, you can really be more forceful about creating that illusion of space. That's just a fancy way of saying it forces your person's eye around the form so that they see how it's moving. And I have a little bit of light on the upper edge of the lip, that little bow shape that we have there. That's one of the nice features that Ellie has is the shape of her mouth. Is that real classical, like 1940s movie star shaped lips. Clarabout, I think, is the, if I remember my movie history, was the one that had that kind of that typical mouth shape. And then I want to get just a little bit darker the separation between the lips. I still have a pretty this big brush, so let's see how fine I can get with that line, considering the size of my brush. I just get a little bit on it on a few of the hairs that are right on the tip. I'm going to have to clean that up a little bit, but it's in the right direction. I'll come back with a smaller brush later, but I'm getting the idea of it, so I can come back in and refine it if I need to. And I'm just going to narrow that nostril a little bit. And I'm going to carve into that shadow that's on the underside of her nose. It's very subtle. Okay, so if I'm looking at all the tones that I have down so far, I'm not light enough on the top of her chin here. And it's really a nice pink color. So if I can get enough red, the reds I have have a very high tinting strength, which means I can add a lot of white to them and still get a little bit of color to read. So that's what I just did, is just add a lot of white, and then it's just about the same color as in the cheek here. So I'm just going to empty out my brush into the cheek, and then I can go a little bit redder on the side of the face. And then in the hand, I'm going to use the alizarin permanent to get that reddish dark shadow. So that's something like, I think it's a little bit higher where the pinky comes in. So there's that triangle shape right there. And then another shape right next to it that's just a little bit lighter. It's still pretty pink. There we go. And then I have another more orangey pink and even lighter. Let's see if I can mix that color right off the bat. It's not too bad. A little bit redder. A little bit lighter. Okay, I'm gonna have to work on that one. There we go. Um, and then I have yellow kind of on the other side of that. That's a lot of yellow. It's okay, so I'm gonna lighten that up, try to the back side of that hand, have the finger, that's the pinky right there. Try to give it that kind of John Singer Sargent treatment. The little bit of pink on the fingertips, and then coming in with that alla prima white that sits right on top. That was sort of his thing, was just those thin stripes of opaque white paint on top of the fingers to really kind of create that illusion of light reflecting off the forms there. And then for that to work, I need the dark around it to support that feeling of light. So let's see if I can get these forms right. I can go back and adjust this a little bit later, but so something like that. Great. So far, not too much connectivity issues. That was my big problem last week. Just about every 10 minutes, the Wi-Fi was going out, and that was just a real distraction, a struggle. Okay, now she has these beautiful eyes. They're just really kind of emerald, radiant color, or more bluish green something. I'm just going to indicate where they are. Eyelashes. Okay, that's just a little bit too low on that side. I can try to adjust that. And she has, okay, that's far too dark. Let's see if I can get a little color in here. So I'm going to start off with a little bit too dark and too much color. That's fine. That'll just give us a little more support for the lighter value. Still hold on to some of that color. There we go. Okay, and I said that eyelashes came a little bit too low, making her eyelid feel a little bit heavy. And the white is a little bit pink on that side. Okay. So I want that corner of the eye here to line with the nose. And I don't really see too much red there, but I'm just going to throw in a little bit to begin with. and then I can dull that down a little bit later. And then she has quite a bit of red underneath her eye, and then a little bit of lighter gray is the underside of the eyelid. There. And then the upper eyelid. And I want a little bit of an indication of where that the crease in the eyelid is, something like that. Then it's going to get a little bit more pronounced on the edges. And then she has the eyeliner, kind of a mauve, violet color here. It's really much softer, so I can use what I have there and just blend it a little bit. Let's see if I can get the cleaner black for her eyelash. I have a little bit of medium here. It's a mixture of Gal Kid and safflower oil. It should give me a little bit of shine and a little bit of flow to get that. Okay. So the only thing really missing then, and I can clean this up and play with it, I've made her eyes have a lot more color. They're in reality have a lot more gray in them. But what I want to do is get that reflection to start to read. Something like that. Okay. And still want a little bit of that smokiness around the eyes that I didn't quite get. And same color here. Okay, need to switch to a bigger brush. Kind of forcing it with that little one, trying to get the paint to come off of it, and it's just not really holding the paint. A little bit lighter. Okay, and I'm going to try to get some of the facets in the nose here so that it reads that it's turning. Got a little bit too much red in there. So I'm going to try to mute it up a little bit. And I have this highlight down the middle of the nose. And I need to give her a little bit more bridge on her nose. That looks pretty good. And a little more this way, and then it goes a little bit darker, rosier. Okay. And if I squint down, I can start to see where my values or colors or placement is off a little bit, but it looks pretty good as a start. Let's just get a little bit darker right in here. Okay, something like that. And just touching this up a little bit, trying to improve that shadow that's there. Let's shorten that a little. Okay, so that's not looking too bad. This cheek here needs a little help. It's much lighter, much softer transition it to look believable, I have to pay attention to that stuff. So several overlapping strokes and I can get a very nice soft transition. And I want to keep the lightest light that's on the cheek right here. So I'm coming in with quite a bit more white right on top. Okay. And then I need a little bit more shadow to support the lights in that cheek, where the hand is pressing. Sorry, pressing against the face there. Just like that. Okay. So one of the things I really liked about this photo is the reflection in the forehead there. It's just really gorgeous. So I want to make sure that I get that working too. So there's a little bit of a kind of a taupey gray color that's in that keystone area of the forehead. I think that's what I've heard it called before. It's that sort of triangle shape that's right at the top of the nose. And then I need to get the color in her forehead that's above that. Painting above where those eyebrows are. Let's dip a little bit of our medium in here to get this flowing a little bit better. Okay, and there's some kind of yellows going on in there as it gets kind of gray or black. So sometimes it'll look yellow, sometimes purple. It's funny things as colors go towards neutrals, you can see kind of both the complementary colors in it at the same time. So sometimes it's hard to judge which way it's going, but sometimes it's both. Sometimes there's both the colors kind of in close proximity. So I see a little bit of yellow, a little bit of purple. Okay, and so let's get use some of that grayish mauve yellowish color here in the brow area. Let's clean up her eyebrow a little bit. I'm making it a little bit blacker and more graphic than it is to begin with. I'll have to decide whether I like that or not. There's a little bit of purple and magenta in it right here. And it kind of drops off. Okay. So, and then I want to get my kind of coolish white color here. Actually, there's a little bit of pink in there, so maybe I'll come back in with more pink as I go. But I really wanted to get that sense of the highlight working in there first. And I think I just have to go a little bit darker here to get that sense of the reflection. Have a nice transition here between this light in the brow and the little bit darker around the edges. I got the eyelashes here, nice and dark. adds, again, the smokiness underneath. Right against the sort of lighter colors at the top of the cheek there. And those soften up as they come on that sort of ledge here that's on the side of the face. These kind of corners start to meet in this point over here. Then I have her ear, which is kind of a little bit darker, pinker. Something like that. That's not too bad. And then I'm going to start putting in just black for her hair. I can add a little bit more color in spots. And it's not quite a pure black. There is sort of highlights that you can see, and then there are darker spots, so I can come in with more black. And I made her face a little bit thinner than it is. I can start to give her a little bit more fullness in her face and soften up this transition here, that will make her face feel a little bit fuller too. And pull her mouth out a little bit. Just a hint of a smile. I want to watch this distance here. I'm going to have to go in maybe and adjust that. And she just has a little bit of a second highlight here. Okay. So, see that kind of same smoky color that's around her eyes just coming in a little bit here. Let's get her ear. So kind of angle. That looks about right. Something like that there for the collar. And then this comes down off the page. Okay. I think I need a bigger brush here to get some of this black, and I just need to put more black on my palette here. Let's make a little bit of space for it. If I have a bunch of colors around the black, that's going to be hard for me to keep the black clean. Okay, and I've been using this chromatic black again. I wonder if it says on here the color mixture. Well, it gives the chemicals, but I know from reading the literature that it is quinacridone red and phthalo emerald. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. But just have a little bit of water here, so maybe that'll help, instead of you guys having to listen to me burp into the microphone. Hold on. Okay, that's better. All right. little bit before I go too far into throwing in her hair. Let's just get her eye indicated. I think that's a pretty good placement. And I'm going to use that same pool of color. Okay, well, I made her iris a little bit too big, so let's curve that a little bit. Let's throw a highlight in there. I don't want to spend too much time on it so that if I have to change it later, I don't feel like I have so much invested. But that actually doesn't look too bad. And there's quite a bit of pink in the white of the eye here. That's too dark. I need to get much more white in there, especially in that the near side has a lot more white. Just gonna go a bit thicker. Get the corner of the eye. Let's get this down. Sort of fades off a little. And then I want to get this shape in here where it's reflecting the light. Clean up the bottom of that eyebrow there. Actually, I think I need to bring the eyebrow down a little bit. This distance seems a little bit smaller. Let's just give her nostril just a little more there. And then there's going to be a little bit of an accent here where this nostril meets up against her cheek there. And then she has a little bit darker on the far side here where these forms fall back a little bit. Just throwing those little indications in help create a little bit more volume, sense of form. Okay, and just clean that up a little bit. Okay. I think overall that's starting to shape up pretty well. I think the placement of things are good. I'll have to take a look at it with my magic mirror when I get a little bit further. That will really tell me where the drawing's off. My magic mirror never fails me, just to show me exactly where I've gone wrong. This is Ellie Vegas watching from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Wonderful demonstration. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Okay, need to go a little bit lighter in there. And then this shadow comes down a little bit further. And then this smokiness in the eyes, I didn't make it quite soft enough here on this edge. So I'm just blurring that edge a little bit. But it is darker. Let's get a little less color in that. It is darker on this edge here. So if I can start it darker and then it lighten up coming across, that'll give it a little bit more sense of form. let's see if I can clean up this crease a little bit. Okay, I made it a little more pronounced than it really is. Is it? It's a little bit redder and lighter in that corner. And then it's cleaner here. So let's obliterate the kind of that double line that I had there. And then it's quite a bit darker on this corner. And the lashes come out a little bit. Or maybe they don't, but that doesn't look bad. Okay. And then, I don't know what I did to that brow, just butchered it. So let's see if I can clean this up. I mean, there are some hairs kind of coming off, softening that upper edge, so just, I can kind of leave that the way it is for right now. Okay, so overall, I think the tones in the face are pretty good. The value structure looks good. The color overall is reading. Okay, I can bring her pinky down a little bit. It's just right here. Then she has a little bit of a shadow behind it. And then that other finger is coming up like that. Great. Okay, so I did get that bigger brush on the ready there so that I can do some of the, block in some of her hair. I'm getting some of the median in there. It's going to give a little bit of a shine to her hair and make the black a little bit punchier. It's something that I really, oh, now I've done it. Lost part of her ear. I mean, it's not critical. I can get away with the shape that it ended up, but what was I saying? Oh, so for years I didn't really use any mediums, didn't really have any reason to, and because I just thought of mediums, oh, mediums are just to help the paint flow better, or help cut drawing time, or help extend drawing time. And what I was missing was that you can also use mediums to create shine, to give the paint more of a glossiness. And I mean, usually you want the glossiness of a painting to be all over kind of even, so that there aren't sort of pockets, glossy, kind of distracting pockets. Um, but in practice, I found that what I was really missing was getting the shadows in my painting um, to be deep enough, rich enough. And I found that by letting them have a little bit of gloss, then they just seemed a couple steps darker. And it's kind of what I needed to get a full value range in the painting, was to really um, have parts that were glossy and have parts that were more matte, like the lighter areas being a little bit more matte, so that um, I really um, then had a full value step from the darkest dark to the lightest light. I was really getting a full range of values. What I was missing before was that my darks tended to dry matte, and they felt like drawing back, meaning that they're actually looking lighter when they dried. And so I really felt like the painting looked the best when it was a little bit wet, and then when it dried, I was losing some of the depth of the painting. So by um, just adding a little bit of Galkid, a bit of linseed oil, some points where I didn't want it to get too shiny, um, that really helped. If I really wanted a lot of shine, then I could just go with pure Galkid, or Galkid that was thinned a little bit with Gamsol. so that it would just dry a little bit faster and not be quite so thick. And that just really got me what I needed to. So I really like the fact that her hair, her shirt really go kind of um, into the black. It's just, it's nice because it's very graphic. And I don't have to put a whole lot of detail in there. I can just go for the black. I did get a little bit of white contaminant in the black there, so I'm just gonna scrape some of that away, clean off my palette, clean off my brush, and then paint over the little bit of white that I already got down there. And it may just add a little more interest and texture. I'm not too worried about it. Doesn't have to be a super flat black. It wouldn't be bad to see some of the brush strokes in there. So actually, if it got a little bit on the thinner side, so you can see the texture in the brushes and the brush strokes, that would be just fine. After all, it is a painting, so allow it to have paint quality. Okay, just gonna cover that up there. And this black, the chromatic black, is highly transparent, and plus that I'm adding a little bit of medium, making it even thinner and more transparent. So it may take a few passes if I really want to get a good amount of coverage there. Okay, let's see if I can mimic the texture of the hair with the brush stroke a little bit. And pay attention to where some of the hair is darker. Where it goes lighter, you can see a little more color. You can see a little bit of red and oranges in there. And may have to go thinner or add a little bit of white to get those kind of highlights. Yeah, that's working. There's a bit of orange. The orange is going to be semi transparent, so that's going to help with getting those areas just a tad lighter. And then she's leaning against like a reddish pillow. That's perfect because it it continues that dark shape, and the only real difference then is a transition, kind of a color transition there. And then I have these kind of areas of light of the blanket that's creating sort of this a little bit of graphic interest. Okay, let's throw in some of the colors of the arm here. That's a little bit too gray. And then it goes off into a pink. Same here. Okay. So this is may take a little bit of cleaning up my palette a little bit to get these colors a little bit cleaner, but there's a lot of gray in there, so I'm not too worried about it yet. Then this comes up a little bit. Well, maybe it drops down the other way. Let's see. Something like that. So it's starting to read. I'm going to have to do a little bit of back and forth before it does feel like flesh and bone. Then we have the heel of the hand. There's a little bit of a darker shape here, and Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy tonight, so let me get a little more water. Okay, so I'm gonna try to block in quickly that rest of the area around her head, just so we don't have so much of the white panel kind of distracting the eye from reading the values. So then I can start to judge the values in the face a lot better. So this is kind of a darker black, a redder black around her head. It actually goes a little bit lighter. Let's see. There's a lot of red in this, but I can always gray it up a little bit. It's going to be harder to get back to a pure red if I need to. I don't actually mind it being a little bit brighter in color than what we're actually seeing in the photo. You know, those can be more like design choices. And her hair is kind of she's really um, laying down, and so her hair is coming up a little bit because it doesn't have gravity to sort of keep it up against her head. And then this gets a little bit purple in here. Let's play into that a little. And then there's shadow that's a little purpler. I think that looks nice. And then kind of darker purple shadow color here. And then okay. And this is where you got the shirt sleeve and then the blanket. So this is kind of a pinkish color. That's sort of the mixture of all the mess that I have on my palette. So I'm just going to blend all that together and then use that for the color. And then it does get a little bit darker in this corner. And then even more so, I can find the right color in that corner. Okay, and that's everything. So now I can really start to compare things, shapes, colors, values, and then I can really work towards the finish and think about it, the painting as a whole, and see how it's working overall. So I think everything is actually, pretty close to being spot on, color and value wise. Everything is reading well. So I just maybe want to compare a little bit to the photo to see if things are doing what's going on in the photo and whether it's important enough I want to change it. Let's get some lights in here, some hair, get some of the locks of hair, the movement. Okay, we're about an hour in. I could almost call it a complete painting. So I'm just going to take my time and really decide what is working, what's not, what do I need to change. See, there's a little bit more of this curve of the hair here, where the red of the pillow behind her comes in. So I'm going to play with that shape a little bit. And then the hair does sort of some curly coos around there. And I just don't feel like the hair there is quite dark enough. So that's where I'm going to come in with a little bit of the medium. And I do want to spend a little more time on this hand, make sure that that really sings. Let's go get purple and black in here. Have this big brush. It's kind of unwieldy, but you can get some kind of interesting things going on with it. And I really want to play up the light on this arm. Of course, her arm feels a little bit too fat coming back here, so I need to trim it a little bit somewhere. And I want to knock down a little bit of the texture in her shirt, her blouse. It's a little bit distracting. I don't mind seeing the brushwork, but just want to see it a little bit less. Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, so the thing I said, I really wanted the focus to be this reflection between her eyes and the reflection in her forehead. And so I am going to see if I can really clean that up a little bit. Put away my biggest brush. That's just a little bit too heavy-handed for what I need to do right now. I want a really clean pink. That's very close to white. So that quinacridone red is just so powerful. So I have to add a lot of white with it to get it back to being close to white. Okay, so soften it up a little bit in some spots. And I also have it's a little bit lighter on top along this hairline. A little bit of more orange back in here. So I'm trying to get some of these complex shapes that are in the forehead really make sure that it's getting the kind of volume that I should get across the top of it. Okay, and then I need the transition to start happening in here. So I need to go a little bit darker before it goes towards this shadow. And then I need to get it a little bit darker here. So this is sort of where it's black, purple, yellow. Not quite so yellow. So I'll get a little more purple in there. Okay, and I'm missing a little bit of the red that's in her cheek here. Of course, that's not the right red, but it looks more like war paint, but I'll knock it back a little bit. And darker grayer. Okay, these color changes are very subtle in here. Okay, that made it look just a little bit dirtier, so I'm going to see if I can clean that up a little bit. And go a little bit stronger with the shadow here. Okay, that's not too far off. And I still want a little more pink here in her cheek. Okay. Now I do have to clean some of this up a little bit and come in with a little bit stronger white. Okay, now I'm starting to get in danger of overworking it a little bit, but Just want to make sure that the things that I really like in the photo I'm getting in the painting. Those little hints of highlight coming across in here. Put a little bit of gray paint in there where I didn't want it. So let's see if I can fix that. And I'm coming in quite a bit thicker here. That's to really play up that sense of reflecting light. And then I have to knock this highlight down a little bit. It's just not quite as strong as I put it. Really want it just a little bit subtler. Softer. Okay, need this where I can come in with a little more yellow instead of so much white. Just to give a little bit of a color difference. There's actually a little bit of green up here, just to give, again, a little more color interest. Purples. There's a bit touch of shadow underneath her lip, so that'll help give a little more depth. Oh, and then I did want to get a little bit cleaner line in the separation of her lips. Let's go with alizarin permanent here. And then I'm going to soften up that line here. just a touch of shadow on the outside of her philtrum. Okay, that may have been a little bit too strong. I can just soften it up a little. Okay, and then she has this really beautiful shape at the bottom of her chin. Just I don't have it quite round and soft enough. And she's catching a little bit of light underneath. Okay, I'm using too small a brush here, but while I'm here, let's kind of refine that shadow a little bit on her cheek. Soften up this. Okay, I need a bigger brush. That little brush is a little too dangerous. So I have a nice synthetic sable here that I can fix some things that I want to fix. Right in here, I need to go a little bit darker. Fix the shape of this eyebrow a little bit. And paint some of the eyebrow with it. This comes up and then makes a really hard turn. And it's sort of that reddish black color. Let's fix this pinky here. So a little bit of the shadow underneath comes down. Then we have a segment of the finger coming down this way. Okay. And then we have the shadow underneath it like that. That's a lot more elegant. Then we have the next segment coming here. And then the back side follows that same direction. Next segment kind of bulges out a little bit here, and then we have the knuckle right there. So that's a little more accurate. And then I want to make it a little darker redder on the underside, give it a little volume. Trim it here with this shadow. And then that plays into the shape of the finger above it. Now, I'm making this very soft. I don't want it to be the focus, but I want it to look right too. Indication of the fingernail. I'm going to soften this highlight there. It's looking pretty good. Don't have to get too crazy about that. just pulling out that shadow a little bit further out. Then you do have the heel of the hand. There's there's like a bone right there. It's a little bit harder shape. It comes pulled down that way. And I want to, feel that tension right in there where the skin is folding. This is pulling kind of at an angle there. Okay. So again, I kind of want this a little bit understated, except for the highlight that's on top. I want that to read really nicely. And have to get a little bit softer on the bottom here. Not messy, softer. So we do want to clean that up a bit. There we go. And that's starting to read a little bit better. It's a little more arm coming up here. And a little more purple on the bottom here. So you can feel that moving back away from us. There's a little bit of a shadow shape here. Okay, and then this is a bit darker. So this is going a little bit farther than I probably need to with this painting because it has nice, simple graphicness to it, and if I get too far in the detail, I'm going to start to lose some of that. There's that little bit of me that wants to make everything look like that it's anatomically correct, even though it's just, big wild brushstrokes. And there is about a bit of forgiveness that the brain gives if it sees that it's abstracted. Your brain will kind of make it work. But if you put all the detail in and it's not quite right, then it's a little harder for the brain to do that. Okay, and then there's something, it just looks a little off here. This is one of those things, that palm of the hand just was down a little bit too low. Okay, so far now I've spent more time on the hand than I had actually painting the face, so it tells you something, that the face, I'm a lot better at faces. gonna still add a little more cheek here. I think I made her face just a little bit too slim. Let's see. So something looks a little off. It'll take me a minute to figure it out. I mean, everything's off a little bit, but there's something that's making it not look quite right. It may be that her earlobe is just too low, which is an easy fix. So it may be um, creating the wrong sense of angle to her head just by having her earlobe there in the wrong place. Something a little more like that. That did help a little bit. Yeah, and then I want to have a little more forehead coming over just a little bit more. Yes, and that is helping. And then let's pull her eyebrow up just a little. These are just little subtle changes. I'm hoping not to hurt the freshness of the painting by making them. So I have to be really careful that I'm not coming in with a tiny little brush and obliterating my original brushwork. Try to preserve it the best I can. Okay, so I see a couple of people have come in. Jack Olson says, thanks, looks great. Bad Habit 13010. Hi, everyone. Brian from North Carolina here. Okay. So we're about an hour and a half in. I think that it's really close to being done. It has a really nice, fresh feel to it. Feels not overworked at this point. I'm just making just some subtle adjustments here and there just so I'm happy with the angle of the head and the anatomy of it. Sometimes when you look back at it later and you wonder why you didn't fix something or you wish you fixed it when you had the chance. I may want to give a little more dimension to her eyes. They're just a little bit flatly painted. Now I just pulled out my mirror. I don't know if you can see this. This is what I call my magic mirror. It lets me see where the drawing is really off. And overall, it's not too bad. I kind of put it right at the corner of my eye and I use it to look back so I can see the flip version of the painting. Have her nose just a little bit longer in the painting than it is in the photo. That doesn't really bother me too much. I do see that the nose, what I don't have is the nose over quite far enough. And so that's just a really subtle adjustment here. Just pulling this edge out a little bit further. gets a little bit of that naphtha red in there. And make this highlight here a little bit whiter. Okay, and I said I wanted to give a little more depth to the eyes, and that's just by getting the corners kind of to move back in space, just by um, creating some tonal difference there in the white of the eye. This is not the right brush to do this with, so I'm going to go back to my smaller brush. Oh, and I forgot, one of the things I really liked in the photo was this little dash of light that's in the corner of the eye. So I want to see if I can get that, which means I have to paint enough dark in that spot so that the highlight stands out on top of that. I need a little more dark here. Okay, so now I can put this highlight in, right there. Okay, I'm going to hit it again. Just really want the white that sits right on top there. I'm going to trim it a little bit. And I think I'm going to come in one more time, so I just get a nice bit of white sitting right on top of the panel. I'm going to try to create an edge here in the upper part of the lower eyelid. With just a very subtle shadow where it meets the white of the eye. Just if I can just indicate it just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so that's a lot closer to what I wanted. Let's see if I can get a little bit of grayness in that blue in her. Got a little carried away with the color. That's fine. But at some point it doesn't look real. It just looks like a bunch of paint. And then I can come in with a a little bit of a lighter blue, the very bottom here, to feel like the light is shining through it. I think that's a lot nicer than what it was before. So let's see if I can do a similar thing, add a little more depth. Let's clean this up right here. And that highlight on the tip of the nose, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I do want to move it over. So, as much as I liked the look of it, I really want it to be in the right spot. This is where I really need a clean, nice clean pink. Okay, I think I moved it over a little bit too far, but that's okay. It's not looking wrong, so. Thought it was coming in too light, and it was darker than I thought. It came in too dark. Okay, and I think we're really close now. Really close to having the overall feel that I want. Wow, that was not the red I wanted there. Soften that up a little bit. Okay, just that white of the eye is not looking clean enough, blue enough, something on the far right side here. And we need that eyelashes to be nice and clean. Just getting indication of the fingernail there, just enough so that you know that there is a fingernail. Okay, so I'm very close now. If I go too much further, it's going to start to look overworked. Just going to soften up in a couple places where I think it needs it. And then I'm going to call it done. You know, sometimes you have to know when to quit when you're ahead. So, I think I got about 5 minutes left before I say that it's finished. Just want to remind people who aren't, that haven't subscribed to my channel and that you want to be notified when I do these live demos or when I post other videos, that please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and then you will not miss them. Let's bring their forehead up a little bit there. Clean up the hair. Okay, need a nice light pink in that spot. There we go. And then it gets a little darker and oranger right below that. And it just goes a little bit darker right here, grayer, darker, just to turn that corner. Not really sure what's here. Maybe that's another finger. So in that case, I can just give a little bit of an indication so that it's an idea of there's something else going on there besides the side of the face. Okay, that's looking gorgeous. Let's pull some hair out a little bit over here. She has a little bit of a flip there. I wanted to do some strands of hair that are looping around here. I can actually exaggerate that a little bit. Okay, I think I like it just the way it is. Just gonna leave it. So I can sign it right into this black here. Still pretty wet. Okay, and that's it. Thank you everyone for joining me tonight, and I think this was good effort. Actually, to see one little thing, just want to make sure she has enough cranium back here, so just gonna, it's those little things that can kind of throw you off a little bit. Yeah, and just a little bit of hair coming out over here too. Okay, and great. All right, so that's done. Thank you all for joining me, and look forward to seeing you all again next week, and have a great night.